So, does Sabrina Carpenter hate men? When she unveiled the first variant cover art for her album Man's Best Friend, audience declared that she actually loves men a little too much. In the photo, she's on her hands and knees, wearing a little black dress, and being pulled, as it were, by her hair. Some found it to be too sexually charged, violent, even. Are we looking in on a moment of consensual, safe BDSM play, or is it a normalized spectacle of misogynistic cruelty? The internet, of course, is the best and only place to have this complex discussion. I understand the concern. This cover came at the diciest political moment possible, between the rescinding of women's rights, along the footpath of a high-profile abuse ring headed by the ruling class, and in the midst of a far-right attempt to glamorize the subjugation of women, girls, and other minorities. Hi, tradwives and manosphere bros. If there was ever a time to hone your satire skills and deliver a piece of art that's cuttingly subversive, this is it. And to some netizens, this cover isn't. To a different audience, the Man's Best Friend cover is a masterclass in feminist rebellion, a reclamation of the bitch identity, and a tongue-in-cheek condemnation of men's violence against women. To this audience, Sabrina Carpenter couldn't possibly be man-centered because, well, she hates men. Everybody, shh. Let them have their moment. Across her big three albums, Sabrina zooms in on the sexual, romantic, and emotional terrorism felt by so many man-daters online, and she makes it look good. Huge publications like Vogue and Forbes recently asked if it's embarrassing to have a boyfriend. Viral Twitter posts wonder, why does having a boyfriend feel Republican? Instagram Reels, Pinterest pins, and the booth full of straight women at your local bar have all declared the same thing, that they never ever want to date a man ever again. Sometimes this divestment is backed by action, other times it's strictly performative. While Sabrina is the latest to repack the horrors of straight culture as something glamorous, she's not the only one. These glitzy projects feel like a revolutionary fuck you to the cis heteropatriarchy, and their shorthand versions can be a concise criticism of systemic violence. However, I would argue that this movement is calcified in a post-feminist anesthesia. People are numbing themselves to the real issue at hand. Those who participate in this movement and those on the outside looking in are locked in a cycle of doom. It's all just so familiar, baby. What do you call it? There's a cuter word for it. I know. Hetero-Pessimism, why you always terrorizing me? Do you think when my YouTube career dries up, I can be a Sabrina Carpenter impersonator on the Las Vegas Strip? I mean, we look just like each other.
They're identical! Look at them!
Before we get into it, make sure to like this video to support its growth and leave a comment down below. And since you're already down there, subscribe. I'm not asking. I know your full name and address. Bet you wish you had today's sponsor. Silence. Brand. So I originally had a sponsor for this video. I did my usual research. I looked at reviews. I made sure it wasn't owned by, like Satan or anything. But sometimes things slip through the cracks, and something did this time. And by something, I mean something suspicious enough to garner millions of views on a video essay about it. So I pulled the plug last minute. This is really a good thing because now I don't have to suck the skin off of a questionable brand just to pay my rent, and can instead suck the skin off myself to pay the rent. What is the physics of that? This video is sponsored by my Patreon. Hello, I'm Shania and I do my own stunts. Everything you see in my videos, from costuming to research to editing to animations to the very script you're listening to, is done entirely by me. I don't use AI because why would I? I post once a month on my main channel, which means I take very little time off between essays. I also post once a month on my Patreon and sometimes once a month on my second channel. No, I'm not going to burn out. Why do you ask? Building my Patreon would mean giving me some much needed breathing room, and I think in the end would allow me to stop relying on brands. My lowest tier is $2, but I think the real fun comes in the $4 and $6 tiers. I post lifestyle vlogs, I sit on my floor and philosophize about revenge, and I sometimes interview other creators about freaky topics like cannibalism. If you're unable to commit to the Patreon, I also have a Ko-fi. You can send me $1. I can be trusted with $1. I'll use it. If money is out of the question, I totally understand. You can help by liking, commenting, and subscribing to the channel for free. Show YouTube that you actually like what I'm doing, and they'll probably, maybe show it to a wider audience. Okay, thanks. That's all. Enjoy the video. And let me put this gun away. Part 1. House Tour. For a time, hetero-pessimism was everyone's favorite F word. The term was coined less than a decade ago by the scholar Asa Seresin, but has already gone through multiple evolutions. Pessimism has since turned into fatalism, and now, according to this article anyway, the era of nihilism is upon us. Seresin defines hetero-pessimism as a performative disaffiliation with heterosexuality, usually expressed in the form of regret, embarrassment, or hopelessness about the straight experience. It works like this. You're out at a party talking to a guy when he suddenly breaks into a monologue about how hard the woman species is to understand, on account of women being from Venus and all. And in some ways, he says, being gay would be just so much better, because then it'd be like hanging out with the guys all the time, right? But unfortunately, he adds, I'm doomed to a life of dating women. And also, if you are actually gay, which is crazy, low-key, I'm fine with it, I guess. Just don't fall in love with me. On social media, straight women say that being attracted to men feels like a mental illness, and Sabrina Carpenter declares that the only good men are dead or already married. There's nobody's son, not anyone left for her to believe in. And look, she would love to care less, but the problem is, the Lord forgot her gay awakening. And so she, like the guy at the party, is resigned to, quote, bitching and moaning. Her words, not mine. When Seresin describes hetero-pessimism as performative, he doesn't mean that straight people are faking it. They are clearly in the trenches, okay? He just means that they're not exerting much effort to get out. Pessimism is idle. Hope is alive. The manosphere is professionally pessimistic. In a concentrated effort to maintain the cis-hetero patriarchy, these men use edgelord tactics and real-life violence to misrepresent, dehumanize, and dispose of both women and feminism. Their followers are actively brainwashed into believing that gender equality is what makes dating hard, while the real problem is sold back to them in pill form. Incels are especially cynical about dating. While some air their frustrations in the shadows of Reddit, others take to the streets in a display of misogynistic terrorism. Men going their own way are similarly fatalistic, arguing that marriage and cohabitation with women is detrimental to men, and it must be stopped. Both subgroups are viewed as aberrations in the mainstream, not only because they're violent misogynists, and in the case of incels, seeming failures at love, but because they violate the first rule of hetero-pessimism. You're supposed to normalize it, make it a performance, but don't make it real. It has to remain passive and unnameable so that it could go on unchallenged. It's just a silly joke on that one sitcom. You know the one, about nagging wives. The husband won't call her a bitch to the camera because of woke, but it's implied. Love is like an invisible prison to straight people. Their spouses are their shackles, their kids mere aliens foisted upon them. And girl, the straight flag don't help none. In the early 2020s, social media users proposed a straight flag, mainly as a way to be really annoying about pride. Unlike the beautiful jewel tones of the bi flag, or the fairy-coated nature of the lesbian flag, or even just the conventional vibrancy of the rainbow flag, the straights on Twitter chose black and white stripes. Not only is this yet another reference to prison, as it evokes imagery of chain gangs, but it's also a quick walk around the corner to slavery. Chain gangs were especially popular in the post-Civil War era, and Black people were frequent targets of incarceration. There's a quirky little loophole in the 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery except in the cases of prison, meaning that prisoners to this day are legal slaves. Straight culture has long since been compared to slavery. Evelyn Reed, writing in 1964, referred to cis heteropatriarchal marriage as domestic enslavement, wherein housewives are inmates who squander their energies in frantic busywork and meaningless details. Take a shot every time I say cis heteropatriarchy from here on out. And no, I will not cover your hospital bills. Can't even cover mine, girl. To put it simply, the cis heteropatriarchy refers to a hierarchical system that privileges white, cis, heterosexual men and oppresses everyone else. To be a woman, especially a trans woman, to be a trans man, to be non-white, non-straight, or a combination of any, is to be othered under this system. Hetero-Pessimism occurs on a cycle dictated by the cis heteropatriarchy. It starts with a promise of divine hetero-union, which is quickly sabotaged by the inherently discriminatory system. This leads to disillusionment in an attempt to numb oneself to reality. Let's look closer. The cis-het experience is how our hierarchical culture validates life. The most acceptable milestones under this system are defined by heterosexual coupling. Ideally, we would all engage in cis-hetero dating, which would lead to cis-hetero marriage and a cis-hetero house of one's own, which would then lead to becoming cis-hetero parents of a cis-hetero child, or 3, removed from your cis-hetero extended family, aka the cis-hetero village, because the goal is to build a new cis-hetero nuclear family in the cis-hetero suburbs, where the cis-hetero wife stays locked in her cis-hetero tower, earning money from the white supremacist cis-hetero TikTok she's making about how women should never work, while her cis-hetero husband goes to film a podcast instead of doing a traditional cis-hetero patriarchal job. Because everyone on planet Earth in this ideal world is a hypocritical grifter. This is the American dream. And everyone knows that America is the only country in the world, so this is everybody's dream. God, if I take a shot for every time I said cis-hetero, I'd die.
2 shots of vodka.
The promises made by the cis-heteropatriarchy follow the same logic proposed by Shanann Palma, that of fairy tales. By following its script, the cis-heteropatriarchy promises that you'll obtain favorable results. Straight people will be happy, powerful, and socially included. Anyone who deviates will suffer. But this promise is flawed. Yes, trans and queer people suffer, but that's because we're systematically oppressed for our identity, not because our identity is inherently painful. Straight people are battling cognitive dissonance, where the reality of the cis-heteropatriarchy isn't what its fantasy suggests. People always ask, are the straights okay? Do they even like each other? And the answer is no. When a couple does show love for one another, with exceptions, especially when it's a man showing unequivocal passion for a woman, they're made fun of. Like, oh, you're so whipped.
The sound of that whip sure will sweet. It's like Jesus gently snapping his finger.
Or, oh, he's such a simp. Straight culture problematizes love, even while it claims that straight love is peak. That's because it's not fashionable to respect someone who's beneath you in a hierarchy. What's sabotaging thy divine het union? Jane Ward argues that it's the very pillars of straight culture. The first is sexual dissatisfaction. The cis-heteropatriarchy doesn't value giving pleasure so much as it values receiving pleasure, while the gender binary argues that women are submissive receivers and men are actionable givers. It doesn't seem to work out that way in the bedroom. Statistics show that straight women have less orgasms on average than lesbians. Yay, lesbians. This lack is routinely joked about and normalized in the media. In Man-Child, for instance, Sabrina Carpenter coyly sings, "Did you just say we're finished? Didn't know we started." The next pillar is gender essentialism. The cis-heteropatriarchy dictates that women are biologically wired to do certain things, like be an unpaid domestic laborer, while men are biologically wired to do other things, like run bad podcasts. These traits are immutable. to believers, meaning that you can't be anything other than what you're born as. Not only is essentialism at the heart of violent ideologies such as white supremacy and transphobia, but it also feeds cis-hetero misery. Men are a species from Mars, and women are a species from Venus. In a forever war of their own, they can't possibly relate to, respect, or love one another. This simple binary dictates that straight women desperately grasp for men, and straight men plod along with no logic, agency, or emotional depth whatsoever. Mind you, this is the overall theme of Man's Best Friend and Short and Sweet. Maybe it's satire after all. In 1947, Edward Podolsky published Sex Today and Wedding Life, a doctor's confidential advice. In it, he lists 10 commandments that wives should follow for a happy marriage. Besides trivializing women's pain and generally telling them to shut up and suck up, he also suggests that men are only grown-up boys. They need mothering. It's the very essentialist, infantilizing rhetoric that Sabrina criticizes in Man-Child, Tears, and Dumb and Poetic. Essentialism is the foundation of the final two pillars of straight culture, the misogyny paradox and normalized misery. Jane Ward put forth the paradox in her book, The Tragedy of Heterosexuality. Straight men and boys are taught to desire women and girls in a culture that also teaches them to hate women and girls. This doublethink manifests in the conflicting nature of catcalls. One minute, a man across the street is calling you fine and telling you to smile because you're beautiful. And then the next, he's calling you a stupid bitch that he didn't want anyway, all because you ignored him. A man can ask for a woman's phone number, presumably because he finds her attractive, and then kill her when she says no. Violence and entitlement are not wired into men. They learn from the patriarchy, like we all do. Ward argues that the cis-heteropatriarchy has damaged straight culture, in part due to its misogyny. We need a feminist intervention, but no one wants to say that. We are in a post-feminist culture with small blips and swift disappearances of watered-down feminist sentiments. In the 2010s, it was cool to call oneself a feminist, kind of, because everyone was doing it. Yeah, in a neoliberal way, but now it's more fashionable to call yourself a girl's girl or woman-centered, which is the morally superior foil to the evil man-centered pick-me's. Wedge! Burn the wedge! It's all a psyop, a way to keep us inactive, numbed out. Ward argues that the project of the cis-heteropatriarchy constantly repackages itself to make all these tragic injustices appear inevitable, if not desirable. The heads are being told that their misery is biblical, biological, or centuries old. In a word, unfixable. It's no wonder that people become pessimistic, especially women whose particular flavor of heteronihilism seems to be a reaction to their own oppression. But the way this manifests, especially online, through performative, inactive phrases, is just another form of anesthesia. Hetero-pessimism might seem like a starting point of a revolution, but in reality, its anesthetizing force has had the ironic effect of stalling some of the momentum of these movements. To be permanently, preemptively disappointed in heterosexuality is to refuse the possibility of changing straight culture for the better, Seresin writes. We refuse to call the issue by its name. We refuse to be honest about what we're fighting. Everything is hidden behind 15 layers of goddamn irony and memes. It's made glamorous, functionally irresistible. Part 2. Sugar Talking. Glamorous hetero-pessimism is now the most popular way to normalize heterosexual misery, and Sabrina Carpenter is cashing in. In a house built in part by the girl Renaissance, she has redesigned a glittering, glamorous room of her own. It's a safe landing pad for irritated yet disastrously horny young women. Social media's established ambivalence towards dating has merged seamlessly with her branding. Here in this dystopic utopia, men ain't shit, but girl, I'ma stick beside them. Glamorous hetero-pessimism makes the ills of straight culture look cool. It's a party and a funeral. It's an aesthetic on Pinterest and a chantable chorus in a song. It's a liminal personality trait that doesn't ask too many hard questions or require too much internal analysis. It tells you, clad in shimmering costumes, edited between mystic film clips, or spoken eloquently in prose, that no one wants to live this way. But we do. Why not have a little fun? Asa Seresin refers to this as a survival instinct, an attachment that can survive detachment. Writing in 1999, Bell Hooks offered something similar. Cynicism is the great mask of the disappointed and betrayed heart. This glamorous ridicule of straight dating, especially done by women, predates Sabrina. Whoopi Goldberg famously said that she wasn't going to get married because she doesn't want a man living in her house, a headline that has been religiously canonized among women on social media. Decades earlier, in 1982, Eartha Kitt laughed wildly when an interviewer asked,
"If a man came into your life, wouldn't you want to compromise?"
Stupid.
2 years later, in 1984, she released the album I Love Men. The title track rejoices, "I love men. They're no good for you." There's, of course, Beyoncé's Lemonade, where she scorns her no-good cheating husband, but in typical het-pess fashion, stays committed to him anyway. And then, God help me, there's the femcel. As someone who has already made a video on femcels, I came into this essay with a burning suspicion that the world of glamorous hetero-pessimism was stealing these people's whole flow. It wouldn't be the first time that language or the aesthetics of incels bled into pop culture. Your best friend is unironically using the term looks-maxing, and the 7-year-old with unfettered access to the internet just called me a foid. They haven't even heard of incels, or the manosphere, thank God. And they sure as hell haven't heard of the feminine mirror, the femcel. To be a femcel means to be a woman who is involuntarily celibate. While incel wasn't always man-focused, it looks that way now. There's even a civil war happening of sorts between the two groups. Incels call femcels volcels, aka fake incels or voluntary incels, because a large part of their ideology rests on the belief that women hold sexual power over men, that women are the gatekeepers of sex, and therefore women are unable to be refused sex. Femcels became mainstream around 2021, and with that emergence, the meaning behind their name changed. Jacob Johansson and Jilly Boyce Kay argue that femcelcore is an aesthetic pleasure taken in the intrinsically unfulfillable nature of heterosexual longing, as well as a valorization of unhealthy or dysfunctional heterosexual attachments. It's an expression of curating the void, and borders on celebration of hopelessness and hetero-pessimism. As the mutation of femcels became more aesthetic-focused, so did its expression of dark heterosexuality. It's impossible, at least for me, to tell the difference between femcel posts on social media and posts made by normie straight women. Femceldom is just as glamorous as Sabrina Carpenter's current branding, but it prays to a different god. Last year, the brilliant video essayist Think Peace Tribe posted on his story that Sabrina Carpenter makes music for people who are too young to get into Lana Del Rey. And that post made everything fall into place for me. So shout out to Think Peace Tribe. There's obviously the conversation about whether both women are glamorizing the image of submission, or worse, abuse. But in terms of this video, Sabrina and Lana perform, I would say, a near identical hetero-pessimism. They use their similar branding of old Hollywood Americana to say things that their iconic white influences were never allowed to. And that's kind of the thing about hetero-pessimism. It's been felt for an indeterminable amount of time, but maybe only within the last few decades has it been acceptable to express so brazenly. And by the last few decades, I mean, maybe 1950 forward. Emma Madden, writing for Dazed, argues that Lana Del Rey is a primer for heterosexuality. Madden, who is a lesbian, previously had a hard time understanding her straight friend's relationship. This friend simultaneously hated and loved her horrible boyfriend. And then Lana entered the public stage, precisely at a moment of pop feminism's resilience era. Her peers sang about overcoming nonsensical desire, Madden states. Del Rey's account of late heterosexuality in a late capitalist world were especially abhorred. But like Sabrina, Lana's just being honest. Her music taps into the leading question of straight women's lives today. Men are stupid and embarrassing. So why do I love them? Want to listen to some music? Too bad, they'll kill me for playing copyrighted material, so just imagine. I chose 3 albums from each artist that I think exemplifies their hetero-pessimistic image. Incidentally, for Lana, they're her first 3 albums. First 3.5. And for Sabrina, they're her latest 3. As is typical with hetero-pessimism, Lana's early work struggles between conflicting values. In Blue Jeans, love is mean and love hurts, which contradicts the truth of love, which is free from anger, domination, or pain. You can get philosophical about it. You can get Kafka-esque, but outside the poetics, in the school of bell hooks that is, love is warm and regenerative. Still, this conflict clings to Lana throughout her artistic span. On the title track for Ultraviolence, she pulls from the 1962 song, He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss by the Crystals. This song references the time the writers saw their babysitter covered in bruises. The story goes that the babysitter brushed off their concern and said that her boyfriend hits her because he loves her. This is categorically untrue. Anyone who abuses you physically, emotionally, or psychologically does not love you. This belief has been normalized by the cis heteropatriarchy. In Shades of Blue, Lana grieves how unfixable her man is, and how his love is neglect. Then, across 3 other songs on the album, she reinforces her simultaneous dismay with and allegiance to the failing relationship. Sabrina builds a similar world of anguish and devotion. Sometimes she even uses the same language as Lana. But ultimately, Sabrina's glamorous hetero-pessimism is more straightforward. In the title track for Emails I Can't Send, she writes directly to her father. Thanks to you, I can't love right. In Decode and Opposite, she speculates that the men she dates feels emasculated by her. Ever present is the same desire to stay committed to the issue. Jane Ward argues that heterosexuality is the only project in the world that isn't shut down, protested against, or revised in some form when it gets bad reviews. Asa Seresin agrees. Hetero-pessimism reveals something about the way we can remain secretly attached to the continuity of the very things we sincerely decry as toxic, boring, or broken. On Short and Sweet's last track, Sabrina sings, "I've heard all of the bad news and the bad reviews, but still, I choose to be in love with you." She repeats this sentiment on Nobody's Son, Goodbye, Such a Funny Way, Slim Pickens, and Sugar Talking. This is why her last 2 albums have kind of flopped in my house. It's so monotonous. But I think that's the point. And clearly, it's relatable to someone. In Lie to Girls, Sabrina sings, "Isn't ideal, but damn, you don't even have to try. It's lucky for you I'm just like my mother and my sisters, all my friends, the girl outside the strip club getting her tarot cards read. Girls will cry and girls will lie and girls will do it till they die for you." Does the ubiquity of this feeling mean it's immutable? Does empowerment and unshackling from men only exist in a Lizzo song, as Madden wrote in their Dazed article? What are we supposed to do? Jane Ward argues that the solution that's sold to us is usually just the poison that made us sick in the first place, now in a glittery, pretty package. For more than a century, heterosexual couples were understood to be repulsed by each other, and seemed to even resent their expected union. Dr. William Robinson, writing in 1922, argued that heterosexual people aren't as naturally happy as the propaganda says they are. In fact, he uses words like delusion and resentment, disgust, mutual ill will, desire for injury, and daily suffering. He's a straight flag truther. That is, he too thinks heteropatriarchal marriage is like a prison, especially for women. A cohort of Western sexologists, social reformers, and eugenicists also noticed this conflict. And in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, they decided that they were going to build heterosexual love from the ground up. Not because they believe in the divine nature of Adam and Eve or because they care about people's happiness or anything. No. They just had their own agenda. Reinforcing heterosexuality as a project was a way to reinforce the white supremacist eugenics movement, which was also cis-heteropatriarchal in nature. The experts wanted to build stronger bonds between white men and white women, something that white feminists would later regurgitate. Give me love, and I'll give you race loyalty. Or something like that. We can see this agenda in the very advice given to heterosexual couples. It refuses to name the core issue of het misery, which was the cis-heteropatriarchy. And by refusing to name it, they failed to fix it. Experts recognize men's disinterest and violence toward women, and women's resentment and fear of men as fundamental obstacles for straight relationships. And consequently, they produced an industry designed to train men and women to like each other, without undermining men's authority or challenging the basic logic of the gender binary. Billions of dollars has since been made off the teachings of the heterosexual repair industry. Feminine hygiene guides of both today and yesteryear promote the importance of bathing, shaving, plucking, smoothing, and even frying the body to achieve desirability. Best-selling books... Best-selling books added to the binary essentialism inherent in such works as Edward Podolsky's Marriage Commandments, which we read earlier. They reassert that men are from Mars and women from Venus, that women and men have completely different brains, and that, yes, they hate each other, but ultimately they need each other. They'll just have to numb themselves or harden themselves or stop being themselves to be loved. The hetero repair industry is its own flavor of hetero-pessimism. It takes the dangers of the cis-heteropatriarchy and it eroticizes them. Ward argues that each of these interventions set the stage for straight culture's emergence as the romantic arm of misogyny, wherein the delicate coexistence of hate and love, the slap and the kiss, would come to represent the hetero-erotic. In other words, straight culture has decided that pessimism and terror is its identity. The dislike, dissatisfaction, complaint, and witnessing by others is part of the hetero-romantic ritual, Ward adds. When we wonder, do straights even like each other? We're asking kind of the wrong questions. Kind of. What we should be concerned about is what makes people believe that suffering through dull, unsatisfying, or one-sided relationships make them a valuable person? Who taught them that to love is to struggle? So much so that when straight people post about their anniversaries on social media, it's become normal to say things like, "We have been through so much together. Ups, downs, really bad traumatic downs, but you're still here." Sometimes. And I am so grateful. Suffering, toiling for love, becomes a badge of honor. Marked by sacrifice, misery, and failure along the way, the journey towards heterosexual happiness, to be found with the elusive good man, remains the journey. People cannot be rescued from forms of suffering that they themselves relate to as badges of honor. Conclusion. Goodbye. Wait, don't kill yourself yet. If you feel repulsed by now, or you've entered a state of existential dread, know that this is by design. The patriarchal institution of heterosexuality is simultaneously boring and repulsive. That's because it wants to seem normal, unquestionable, much like whiteness. Also that it can quietly exterminate its opposition. The trans French scholar, Paul Preciado, once wrote, "It doesn't excite me. It doesn't interest me. The grotesque and murderous aesthetics of necropolitical heterosexuality turns my stomach." When Jane Ward said that we can't rescue people from this condition, she didn't mean that the cis-heteropatriarchy is infallible. It means that if we continue to uphold a system that is trying to kill us, because we think it's going to trickle down and give us salvation, we'll never be able to do shit. We will never be able to dismantle that system. By all means, have fun, have a good time on the internet. It's all we have left sometimes. We can ooh and ah at the aesthetics of Sabrina Carpenter. We can joke online about how men can be pretty terrible sometimes. But we also have to be so fucking for real. We are grown fucking adults. We need to stop numbing ourselves and we need to become active. Pessimism and the various internet shorthands may be easy to digest and the point behind them may be true. But why not just speak clearly? I mean, that's what really gets me. Just say the thing. Are you a girl's girl Or are you a feminist? Do you hate men and wish you were gay? Or do you declare war on the system that breadcrumbs all of us below it and sucks off the ruling class above us? I mean, one is a soothing agent that allows you to look away while you're claiming to still be present, and the other is a fucking manifesto. Making these kinds of videos was funny the first 5 years, but the time to grow up was fucking forever ago, guys. Ward argues that we must redefine heterosexuality, expand its basic ingredients to include more, not less, attachment and identification between women and men. One must be a feminist, she argues, and men's sense of being sexually orientated towards women must signal, as it does for most lesbians, an acute interest and an investment in women's lives and accomplishments. To be into women, one must be for women. You can start by examining your history of attraction. What do you like about your orientation? What do you like about the opposite gender? When did you first realize you were straight? This is the same sentiment bell hooks gave men who are looking to escape the patriarchy. You should look backward, trace your history. Ward goes on, learn to relate to your heterosexuality as a cultivated desire of which you are agent, rather than victim or passive recipient. Pierce through the fantasy we're sold about the natural ease and happiness of heterosexuality, and instead learn to recognize the structural and cultural conditions that have produced, but also stunted, your heterosexuality. A lot of people reject the effort of change because they think that it's giving too much energy to people who hate them, or worse, people who are indifferent towards them. For example, every time I make a video about the patriarchy, and I dare talk about men in it, even for a small part of the video, a group of women gather in my comments to call me man-centered and a pick-me. Because doing that is easier than reading from intersectional feminists, I guess. I wish you could crawl into my head without the risk of killing me, just so you can see how laughable it is to call me man-centered.
You must think about that one again.
I talk about this stuff because I want to. It's fun. I know I'm not PBS or anything, but I've gotten comments saying that I've opened people's eyes to this stuff. If I thought that everyone who benefits from my oppression was inherently unchangeable or doomed to a life of upholding that system of harm, I would stop talking about the patriarchy altogether. And I would also stop making videos about white supremacy. I would entirely ignore the white women who watch me and who, on occasion, have been patriarchal and racist towards me. Okay, y'all don't like to talk about that, do you? This work has to be consensual. Some of us have to be willing to put in a certain amount of effort, online and offline, and some of us have to be willing to listen. As bell hooks wrote, we can guide, instruct, observe, and share information and skills, but we cannot do for people what they must do for themselves. To the straights, I see you and I hear you. Love is love. It's okay to be straight. I am your ally. This is your sign to dump your terrible boyfriend if it's safe for you to do so, and everyone, men, women, and chaotic enemies of the state like me, feminism now.